What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. You just know the war is going badly when even the die-hard cheerleaders start switching sides. Not because they found morality or ethics or God, but because the reality is smashed through their rose-tinted bunker windows. Today we are diving into the downfall of a certain Mikhail Polynkov. Not exactly a branded house name like Slavyov, but definitely a huge symbol inside Z-blogger's ecosystem. He's not a pacifist, not a dissident, not Navalny 2.0, but, well, obviously quite the opposite. He's a pro-war, full-throttle, Russian world everywhere romantic, who finally realized that Putin's war is not some glorious crusade. It is a sewage pit. And he dared to say it out loud. That was his mistake. And as you could have already imagined, anything anti-war, no matter how much you were supporting it in the past, is completely unacceptable by the regime. So, what happens when a system built on fear, fake patriotism and corpses gets questioned by one of its own? It's quite simple, it eats them alive. And Polenkov, who once helped even launch the people's militia in Donbas, got swallowed whole. His arrest was not just an isolated incident, it was a flashing red sign for everyone still blindly waving Z flags. That no matter what you do, don't even think about doing something what Putin might not like. So today, let's talk about betrayal from within, failed ideologies, forgotten soldiers and a regime that's more terrified of truth than of any Western tank. Because honestly, at least inside Russia, this war is no longer about fighting against neo-Nazis, Satanists or Westerners. It's about doing everything possible to continue making people believe that this war is necessary, to continue making them believe that the Russian army is the righteous one, and to fight the truth itself, no matter the price and consequences. Let's rewind just a little bit. There is this weird species in Russia, let's call them the anti-war militarists, and no, that's not a contradiction, at least in Russia. These are the guys who helped ignite the war in 2014, screamed for blood, fantasized about Novorossiya, and demanded to liberate territories nobody asked them to touch. But then, something happened. After the full-scale invasion of 2022, after Russia lost thousands of men in stupid meat-grinder assaults, and after the cities they claimed to free turned into shattered ruins, the believers had a crisis of faith. Turns out, all that chest-thumping glory was just another funeral procession in disguise. Apparently, when you are so hateful towards your enemy and you want to eliminate every single one of them, the price for doing so are the lives of your very own soldiers. What a surprise. Which in most cases, by the way, is even greater, since assaulting side losses are usually approximately 3 times higher. Take Maxim Kalashnikov, for example. A loyal Girkinist, this part of the swampy circle about Igor Girkin, the guy who still dreams about restoring the empire in between court hearings and rotten jail cells. You might have heard about him, Igor Strelkov Girkin, but okay. Kalashnikov visited the war zone, saw the apocalyptic wreckage of Toshkivka, and finally asked the obvious. Is this how we really help Donbas region? Congratulations, Maxim, you reached stage 1 of enlightenment, cognitive dissonance. From glorious crusade to looted piles of bodies in just 10 years flat. He's not alone. Other Girkin cronies have gone through similar metamorphoses. What was once the Russian world now looks like a cemetery where the only thing left is despair. This is the inevitable path every fanatic follows, unless he perishes in the process of his blind hatred. Every single one, no exceptions. You either die for what you think is the right cause, or you see for yourself that this cause was nothing else but a horrible fairy tale inflicted on your mindset by unwilling exposure to propaganda. And yet, believe it or not, they still don't call themselves anti-war. They still insist they support the mission. They just hate how's it going. But here's one thing. When your every post is about death, betrayal, looting and incompetence, guess what? You are anti-war. You do exactly the same things and spread the very same ideas the opposition forces do. So welcome to the club, no handshake required, no even need to show your membership ticket, I guess, just please take a seat, we got plenty. But let's talk in a little bit more details about the hero of today's episode, Mikhail Polynkov, since his arrest is something what made us do this whole today's video. Let's talk about him in our next chapter. So yes, Mikhail Polynkov, or better known to some people under his code name Krustalik. He was deep in the trenches of the 2014 mess, helping set up the infamous People's Militia in Donbas. He did not wear the official Russian uniform, of course, he was too clever for that. But make no mistake, he was all in. Then in 2022, he went to the front lines again. And when the lines blurred between the DPR militia and the official Russian army, he just slipped away. No contract, no paperwork, no official desertion, just bureaucratic fog and ambiguity, uncertainty, the kind that Putin's state absolutely loves because it lets them easily decide after the fact whether you're a hero or a traitor. Instead of hiding, Polenkov went public, like very public, He launched Soldiers' Truth, a Telegram and YouTube project that does not call itself anti-war, but walks, talks and cries like one. Through this channel, Polenkov became the voice of soldiers' families, desperate mothers, wives and siblings begging for help because their wounded loved ones were being thrown back into the front like broken tools. Men with shrapnel in their bodies, missing eardrums, open infections, PTSD, everything, all being told to just shut up, pick a rifle and do your duty or else. He documented them, hundreds of them. Sounds exactly what would an anti-war volunteer organization would do, right? Definitely not a person who helped build the entire army of Ukrainians to fight against Ukrainians. But okay, whatever. He also started collecting the names of the missings. No government database, no help from the Ministry of Defense, just a guy with a phone, a mission and a moral breakdown. As of mid-2025, his missing in action list hit 2,770 names. He created an NGO called Red Helmets to recover bodies. And yes, the very same bodies under the ruins Russia has occupied for over a year. Because when the Z army apparently comes to liberate your place and help locals, even their own comrades don't deserve the proper burial. So what else to tell about Ukrainians then? We're talking about places like Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Marinka, which are still the graveyards wearing the mask of victory. And that was the final straw for the regime towards Polenkov. Not the critiques, not the videos, not even the insults towards Solovyov's media circus. It was the dead. You're not supposed to count them in Putin's Russia. You're not supposed to care. Because if you do, if you tell the people of Russia that their soldiers are perishing, if you tell the truth in general, it means you're discrediting the army. And the only reward for doing this is, well, obviously going straight to jail. Why would these people change their beliefs so radically in the first place then? How can you go from militarizing the entire region against their own countrymen to feeling sorry about the eliminated soldiers and demanding accountability? Well, let's try to answer this question in our next chapter. Here is the real irony. People like Polenkov, Gabaryov, Girkin did not start as dissidents. They were Putinists to the very bone. They believed in the project. They helped even launch it. But faith is a fragile thing when every truth leads to a lie and every promise leads to a coffin. Gubaryov, once proudly calling himself Putin's foot soldier, now calls the system a regime of fear. Bureaucrats fear law enforcement fears bureaucrats, judges fear everyone. A nation trapped in its own haunted house, except this ain't no carnival of joy and laughter. And the more these guys talk, the clearer it becomes. They do not believe in Putin anymore. Not because they read Navalny's blog, but because they saw the wreckage firsthand. They saw it themselves with their own eyes. This is something what no propaganda can ever deny. How can you think that what you saw was not there, just because TV told you so? And sure, there are extreme cases of completely brainwashed people who believe everything TV tells them, but we're not talking about them in today's video. We're talking about fanatics who saw themselves what this war and the results of their work, past work brings. And when they speak up, when they do speak up, even carefully, even with caveats, the system panics. Because nothing threatens a paranoid regime more than a former insider turning on it. These guys do not want liberal reforms. They want accountability. They want answers. And Putin's entire state structure is built to give neither. So Polenkov was dragged out of his home in a joint operation. Police, military, FSB, the whole alphabet soup. They smashed his door, broadcast his charges on Kremlin-friendly TV station, and smeared him as a deserter, a traitor, and a disinformation agent paid by the West. I'm surprised, by the way, that they did not mention that Zelensky personally gave him the bag full of cash. But anyways, Solovyov's propaganda machine celebrated like it was Christmas for them, because if there is one thing Russia's loudest TV clown hates more than Ukraine, it is somebody calling him out on his hypocrisy. And Polenkov did it, often and very loudly. Unfortunately for him, Solovyov was louder, and he was yelling Kremlin-approved things. But that does not necessarily mean that he is forever safe, because if and when he starts finally opening his eyes, the system will absorb and digest him as well, like he was nothing but a toxic grain of salt. And now, we get to the ugliest part, the internal war. Not Russia versus Ukraine, but Russia versus Russia. This is not just about tanks and missiles anymore, it's about narratives, factions, grudges and egos. People like Solovyov are terrified of people like Polenkov, because they expose the cracks in the mirror. Solovyov screams about enemies while collecting Rolexes and buying villas in Italy. Polenkov tries to counter that and bring their bodies home. One is rewarded, the other is arrested. If we'll be talking about any other country except Russia, I will ask you guys the question, guess who is who? But well, that, as you can imagine, is a redundant question and doesn't make sense in our case. We're just gonna skip it, I guess. We can all agree on that. Even more tragically, some of Polenkov's enemies wear the same uniform he once supported. The now infamous 87th Regiment under the command of Igor Zloy Puzik was responsible for eliminating 2 drone operators who have dared to expose internal corruption. What was their crime? Just simply refusing to look away, refusing to play along. Meanwhile, guys pushing drugs inside that same regiment walk free because, surprise, they're connected. They pay their dues to the right officers, they help maintain the illusion. This is how Putin's army functions now. Silencing whistleblowers, recycling the wounded, and protecting criminals as long as they know who to bribe. And anyone like Polenkov who tries to rise above the rot is treated like a threat. Not because he's anti-war, but because he's anti-BS. That is the unforgivable sin in today's Putin's Russia. You better be immoral or liar and hypocrite, but don't you dare being a decent human being who cares about the others. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support my work, the links down below, for example, PayPal donations, everything once again is down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.